We knew the order came from beyond him, but at that time we had no idea where from. It came out of the little White House. There was two gentlemen in there who more or less had the knowledge and the communications. Harry Bennett provided the authority, and Dr. Costain provided the connection. And the drop-dead date was handed down on the authority of the White House to the Chief of Naval Operations that it must be conducted by or on the 12th of August. With the problems we had, the Navy knew, and those people knew, that Dr. von Neumann was going to delay as long as possible, and the final test would get as much time as possible. He worked around the clock trying to correct the problem because he knew he had a serious problem, and they could not correct it. In any case, they waited until the 12th of August, which was the desired slot. On the other end, we had the Phoenix Project. Now, what is the history, very, very briefly, of the Phoenix Project? Its hardware became functional about 1975 in the earliest phases. Preston Nichols has gone into this heavily in the past. And by 77, it was operational. By 79, all the changes had been made. And it was signed off as a functioning entity, a fully operational project in 1980, and it was functioning from that point until it crashed on the night of 12 August 1983, sabotaged. That, however, is not germane to this part of the story. On the 1st of August of 1983, something very unusual happened. Prior to that time, the operation of the station, the Montauk operation, Project Phoenix, had been on an intermittent basis, several hours a day, maybe 8 hours a day, once every 2 or 3 days, whatever they had going in the way of a project where they wanted to utilize the equipment, they used it, but it was never used on a continuous basis, day after day. On the 1st of August, an order came down through the channels that the station would be turned on and left operational continuously until further notice. That meant around the clock, and it was. Now, what did this mean? I'm going to first show you a few slides, and I'm going to get into a little bit of, shall we say, whiteboard operation to show some of the aspects that are involved in terms of the time. I've shown these slides before, but perhaps it's a good reminder. The Philadelphia experiment took place outside of the Philadelphia Navy Yard. Where is the pointer?
It's right there.
Ah, there it is. Right opposite a little town, if we can get a little better focus, entitled called Red Bank, is where the Philadelphia Navy Yard is, still, though it may not be after this year is over. They are threatening to close it. The Eldridge was docked here. When they ran the test, they went down the river here a distance, quite a distance, to where the bay was at least 2 miles wide. It was about a mile on this point. They went further down the line here. This is, of course, a picture of the famous Eldridge, a file shot. I will not go into the equipment other than to say the main body of equipment was in this little cubicle. That was the door where we went in and out. In the test, there was a special antenna mast on top here, designed by T. Townsend Brown, a special omnidirectional phased array to handle the output from 4 transmitters. And this was the ship for the final test that was used in the Philadelphia harbor, further down, of course, away from Philadelphia. The Phoenix Project took place on the extreme end of Long Island, way out here on the tip. And there was a park there. There's a town of Montauk a little further in. There's a state park out there and also a military base. It does not show in this photo, actually mapped by AAA, because this is the most recent one. Earlier ones show the military base inactive. Fort Hero, in the extreme end, had been there since 1916, perhaps, prior to World War I, and was abandoned in 1986 after all the tests were over. But that was where the other end of the terminal, shall we say, of the 2 experiments took place, out here. And that was the Phoenix Project, the prime home. At one time, there were 25 operating ones. And that that was the one that caused the lockup, the one that was primarily concerned. In case you haven't seen any of the photos, I'll only show two. The main radar tower from the SAGE system, which was adapted and changed to the Phoenix project. There's this, and that's what you see driving east from Montauk. It's a huge building and a tower with the antenna on top, which is 60 feet high and 120 feet across and weighs approximately 125 tons. And close up, if you get on the base, which is open, and you can wander out there if you want to. Don't do it during the day. This is the tower, 8 feet, approximately 8 stories high, and with the antenna, the total height is about 150 feet, we estimate. Now I'm going to leave this slide on because what we were dealing with, very briefly again, in the structure of our universe as we know it, is a five-dimensional universe, five-dimensional nature, other than is in the blackboard. And time is of itself, as I think this slide is familiar to Bob Bielek, is in the form of a huge torus and is a structure. This is a mathematical representation, of course. You have a central flow of time through the center, a more or less linear flow, which we call the time we measure, the fourth dimension. And of course you have this helical coil on the outside, which actually establishes the time rate flow. And this is called T2 and is actually the fifth dimension. Now what I need to get into here a little bit is what really goes on. This is somewhat poorly done, but I'm not a great artist. We'll call this 1, 2, 3, three dimensions of physical reality as we know them. And according to theory, Einstein et al., time at the right angle, we'll call a fourth dimension, is at a right angle theoretically. These three physical dimensions flow and exist in time. If there was no time, our reality, our physical reality would not exist. So supposedly these are at right angles. They flow according to a rate which you can describe in the torus of time. But there's another important aspect, and this is the very important one. We actually have a fifth dimension, we'll call it T2, which is the fifth. And it is, if you look at it on end from the torus, take a cross-section, this is a neat little thing which is really another vector on the end of the fourth dimension, which is the fifth. And this thing is describing, in essence, a circle. And as it corkscrews ahead, we call it forward time by mere reference. We don't know whether we're going forward or we're going backwards. It depends upon which universe you're looking at. But it creates the fourth dimensional vector in the center, which is a more or less even flow, theoretically very even. We'll not go into other problems which could change that rate in terms of the universe. This was what we were playing with in the project, and actually this is what they were playing with in both projects. Here's time in its essence. Now the Eldridge had a field created around it, the purpose of which was, again using the pointer and looking at this, the purpose of which, when the confined field of the Eldridge, was to change the helical rate. If you change the helical rate, you change the time flow, but you don't want to speed it up to the point where the ship disappears. What you want to do is something rather exotic. I'm saying what you want to do because what they wanted to do and what they did do are two different things.